Hare Krishna. So welcome back. We are continuing to study the Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 15, the Purushottama Yoga. So far we have discussed about the analogy that Krishna explains about the banyan tree, which is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. This material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world, wherein we are trying to satisfy our senses by being under illusion. We are being covered by the three modes of material nature, and the jiva is trying to lord over the material nature. In pursuit of trying to satisfy his senses, he is traveling himself into various planets. He is transmigrating him to various bodies, and he is trying to enjoy life in the material world, but there is no enjoyment here. That is the reality. As a result, the jiva is actually suffering, being conditioned in his body. So Krishna explains that Urdhvamulam adashakam ashvatam prahuravyayam chandamsi yasya parnani yastam vedasa vedavit. He says that one should understand about this tree of banyan tree. One should understand this banyan tree, which is a perverted reflection of this spiritual world. And one who knows about it, what he should do? Asanga shastrena dridena chitva. He should use with the knowledge from the scriptures, he should detach himself from this banyan tree, cut himself off from this banyan tree with determination. That is very much required. Then Krishna also explains what are the other things needs to be done. Nirmana moha, jita sanga dosha, adhyatma nitya vinivritta kama. One should become, one should not be proud, as Krishna explained in the 13th chapter about the process of gaining knowledge. One should develop this quality of amanitvam adambitvam. So nirmana, and then when we are nirmana, then with a submissive spirit, we try to learn about the knowledge about the spiritual practice, the spiritual culture, or the process of Krishna consciousness from a bona fide spiritual master. Then we come out of illusion, nirmana moha. Jita sanga dosha, definitely we should avoid the association of non-devotees. Adhyatma nitya, so the eternal practice of spiritual life, adhyatma, we should try to practice, we should engage in that more and more. Then we should keep a full stop, or we should just shift delete in computer terms if you have to see. This lust, we have been struggling with this from time immemorial. Forgetfulness of Krishna has made us to try enjoyment in various ways in this material world. So vinivritta kamaha, dvandvair. So once we take up this process and then we try to engage ourselves in Krishna consciousness, then we also become free from dvandvair, vimukta, sukha dukkha sanyaya. Always there is happiness and distress in this material world. That is, this comes as a package. There is happiness, immediately there will be distress, and after distress there will be happiness. But then also acharyas and scriptures, they very much reveal, actually there is only distress in this material world, there is no happiness. There is an interval between the two distress that we consider as happiness. So easily spoken, and to realize we need to realize this. If we realize this, then we become self-realized souls. So sukha dukkha sangnair gacchantyamuda padam avyayam tat. So then we need to focus. Our focus should be towards the spiritual world, not to this temporary material world. Then Krishna glorifies about this spiritual world, how it is, there is no need of current, there is no need of sun, there is no need of moon. It is self-illuminating, and then one who goes there never comes back. Yad gatvara nivartante tadhama paramam mama. So then Krishna goes on to explain about the nature of the jiva, how the jiva is conditioned in this material world. With his senses and mind, he is struggling to lord over the material nature, but he is frustrated by that attempt, because jiva by nature is part and parcel of Krishna. Eternally he is part and parcel of Krishna. That is being established. And while discussing that, yesterday when we discussed this Mamai Vamsho Jivaloka Shloka, we were discussing about how the Mayavadis misinterpret this verse, and then they come up with their various interpretations. Yesterday I just wanted to share with you a quote from Srila Prabhupada's Conversations. So I would like to just share it now before we continue with the series of verses today. Here is the one. I think this is from one of the lecture, second chapter lectures, maybe for verse number 13, I think. Okay, now Srila Prabhupada is speaking. Now the Mayavadi says that this individuality is Maya. Which individuality? Jiva being individual, they say it is Maya. So their conception is that spirit, the whole spirit is a lump. Their theory is Ghatakasha, Potakasha. Ghatakasha, Potakasha means just like the sky. The sky is an expansion, impersonal expansion. So in a pot, in a water pot, in a pitcher that is closed. Now within the pitcher there is also sky, a small sky. Now as soon as the pitcher is broken, the outside, the bigger sky and the small sky within the pitcher mixes. That is the Mayavada theory. This is what we spoke yesterday. But this analogy cannot be applied. Analogy means points of similarity. That is the law of analogy. The sky cannot be compared. The small sky within the pitcher cannot be compared with the living entity. It is material, matter. Sky is matter and individual living entity is spirit. So yesterday that's what we explained, that spirit and matter, it's not a compatible analogy. So we cannot compare like this. So how you can say, just like a small ant, it is spirit soul, it has got its individuality. But a big dead stone, hill or mountain, it has no individuality. Another difference Prabhupada is pointing out. So matter has no individuality, spirit has individuality. So if the points of similarity differ, then there is no analogy. That is the law of analogy. So you cannot analogize with matter and spirit. Therefore this analogy is fallacious. The Ghatakasha, Potakasha. Then another evidence in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that Mamaivamsho Jiva Bhuta. These individuals, they are my part and parcel. Jiva Loke Sanatanaha, and they are eternal. That means eternally they are part and parcel. Then how this Mayavada theory can be supported? That due to Maya, being covered by Maya, they are now appearing individual, separate. But when the covering of Maya will be taken away, they will mix up just like the small sky within the picture and the big sky outside mixes. So this analogy is fallacious from logical point of view as well as from authentic Vedic point of view. They are eternally fragments. So at the very premise, at the beginning itself also, we can see, yesterday we discussed the point that they say that the Brahman is broken down into smaller pieces. We defeated that idea. Prabhupada defeats that idea with the point that how the Brahman can be broken down. The Jiva cannot be broken down. One of the nature of the soul is Achedyoyam. It is unbreakable. We discussed this, isn't it? So that's the point. That's one definition. And also Prabhupada is giving another, there's a very incompatible comparison of Jiva and the ether or the sky. It's not at all proper compatibility. So we reject this example itself. If you try to go by that logic, the pot is broken, the air inside this merges. But we just at the outset we reject this analogy. Prabhupada goes on to explain one more point. There are many other evidences from Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita says that spirit cannot be fragmented. So if you say that by covering of Maya, the spirit has become fragment, that is not possible. See? It cannot be cut. Just like if you cut one big piece of paper into small fragments, it is possible because it is matter. But spiritually it is not possible. Spiritually, eternally the fragments are fragments and the Supreme is Supreme. Krishna is Supreme and we are fragmental parts. These things are explained in the Bhagavad Gita in different places very nicely. I request you all to keep one copy of the Bhagavad Gita, every one of you, and read it carefully. And there will be examination. Prabhupada goes on to explain that. So anyway, so this is the point, because this is why I just repeated this and then showed you references. This is an important philosophical point we need to know. Because we may in our preaching meet somebody, sometimes they come up with this analogy, Katakash, Patakash. And then they will say, then we'll be stuck. But immediately we should know, your analogy is useless analogy. Your comparison is nonsense. And we reject it. Okay. Then what is the analogy that we give? We give the example of the sun and the sunlight. And then explain the philosophy of Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva. Okay, we will go back to the subject. Okay, so let's further discuss what we saw yesterday. So, Amaivamsa Jiva Loka was discussed. And then this Jiva, what is the connection? This Jiva is what it is doing. It is it is transmigrating to various bodies. So what Krishna says, Vayur Gandhan Ivashayat. Like how the aroma is carried by the air. Similarly, our previous samskaras, our previous habits, everything we carry with us in the subtle body carries us to the next body. Then what Krishna says? Then Krishna goes on to explain that now what is, so having gone to another body, what the jiva is trying to do? Basically the jiva, with all the senses, it is trying to enjoy the sense objects with the central, with mind in the center, Shrotram, Chakshu, Sparshanam, Rasanam, Granam, Adhishtayam, Anaschayam, keeping the mind in the center, mind is giving all directions to all the sense objects to enjoy. This is what the jiva is doing. And then, as he does this, what happens? Utkramantam sitang vapi, bunjanam va gunanvitam, vimuda nanu pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. He goes on he goes on changing the bodies, one after the other. But those who are fools, they cannot see that there is utkramantam sitang vapi. There is, we quit the body, we take up a new body, transmigration is happening, reincarnation is happening. The fools do not know. But one who is with knowledge, he can see. And then who is the person who sees that? The one who is a yogi, who is self-realized, he can see this. He has this knowledge. Prabhupada goes on to explain. So the devotee can see this very clearly. Then Krishna goes on to explain that actually I am only giving you even for you to enjoy this material world, for you to come out of this material world, I am the sustaining principle. So he says, Gama Vashyacha Bhutani, Dharayamaham Ojasa. By my splendor, I actually, as the sun and moon, I give the energy for you to enjoy this world. For us to see, for us to walk, he gives the energy. And for all the vegetables, the grains, everything is nourished by the sun and the moon. Krishna also says that I am holding the planet. If I don't hold the planet, nothing moves. Then Krishna goes on to explain that actually even the food that you digest, actually I am as Vaishvanara sitting inside the stomach. I actually help your digestion. Even for us, we cannot even digest our food. Then Krishna goes on to explain that I give you the knowledge, I give you the remembrance, I give you the forgetfulness. Smritir Jnanam Apohanam. All the three is given by the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. So Krishna says, how does the verse goes? Sarvasya chaham Ridhi Sannivishtaha Matta Smritir Jnanam Apohanam cha. So this verse, it explains that. So for you to enjoy this material world also, you need to know, for example, I am taking rest, and then I just wake up in the morning. No, if you are into amnesia, what will happen? We just forget who is our relationship, who is our father, who is our mother, who is our wife, who is our daughter, who is our son, everything we forget. But Krishna gives us the memory. Immediately we remember what we need to do. Immediately we know, we get on with our daily activities. That remembrance Krishna gives. So, Smritir Jnanam Apohanam. All these things Krishna is giving. In that way, he is allowing us to forget him also. You want to forget and you want to lord over this material nature, try. You keep trying. But then, if you show interest that I only want Krishna. I want to know about the pure process of devotional service. I want to understand, I want to surrender, I want to practice. Then he gives the knowledge also. He gives the required knowledge. Then he is giving the guidance. So the second part of the verse, what it says, Vedaischa sarvair ahameva vedyaha. So by studying the Vedas, I am to be known. Vedanta krit. I am the compiler of the entire Vedas. Vedavid. I know the entire, the conclusion of the entire Vedas. So Krishna gives the solution. So this is what we discussed yesterday. Now, we are coming to another important section of this chapter. This is called as the 3 shlokas in which Krishna is going to discuss the summary of the Vedanta, or giving the entire essence of the Vedanta, or entire essence of the Vedas, which is the Vedanta, and the entire essence of the Vedanta, Krishna is concluding these 3 verses. And also we see how Krishna is going to, as if you see in the concluding purport, concluding paragraph of the previous purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about 3 important points from the Vedas. What are those? Anybody remember? Yesterday we discussed. If you see in the purport, last paragraph, Prabhupada is discussing what is the Vedanta Sutra giving, what is the message the Vedanta Sutra giving. So he's speaking about Sambandha, Abhidaya and Prayojana. We discussed it. Do you remember now? So Prabhupada spoke about Sambandha. Vedas are giving us the how to revive our lost relationship with the Lord by gives the knowledge about the soul, about the Lord, what is the relationship, what is his relationship with this material world, and all those details. Then Abhidaya, it gives us the process by which we can develop that relationship with the Supreme Lord. And then by practicing, by getting into the process of Krishna consciousness, what is it that one achieves? One achieves pure love for Krishna. So all this Sambandha, Abhidaya, Prayojana, this knowledge is given in the Vedanta Sutra. Now Krishna here, in these 3 verses, he is elaborating on this subject. Now I'll give you a little bit background. What is there in the Vedanta Sutra? In the Vedanta Sutra, everything is given in simple codes. The subject matter of Vedas, the Upanishads, everything is given as codes, sutras. Now actually, if you want to discuss this 3 shlokas, so all the previous acharyas are giving, they are also explaining that all these 3 verses are called as the summary of the Vedas. Of course, His Holiness Sohotra Swami is calling it as a Trishloki. We don't actually see any this like we have Chatushloki that is mentioned by the previous acharyas. Specifically, the word Trishloki is not given, but these 3 verses very much gives the essence of the Vedanta Sutra, essence of all the Vedas. That is for sure. So anyway, so we just call it Trishloki. So these 3 verses gives the essence. But now there are so much of subject is being discussed here. If it has to be actually a seminar, that should go on for maybe some 3 sessions, because it very clearly establishes the position of what is the position of the material world, what is the position of the jiva, what are the different energies, what are the Lord's different shaktis, what are these different avatars. All this needs to be understood. So it's a big subject matter, but in essence we will see what it is, these 3 verses. Now, so as we say, so there is a discussion in the Vedanta Sutra about the cause of this creation. What is the cause? Who is the cause? Every philosopher has got a different opinion. We can also see this kind of a discussion happening between Parikshit and the bull in the first canto of the Bhagavatam. They'll never tell who is the cause. So many causes they will speak, which are partial facts. Somebody says that the cause is the jiva, somebody says the material nature is the cause, someone says that the karma is the cause. So like that there are so many causations that are given, which are partially true, but actually the ultimate cause, the Vedanta Sutra concludes, the ultimate cause of all causes is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there is someone comes to a conclusion of Brahman is the cause, then the ultimate, this is what Vedas concludes that Krishna is the supreme, the absolute truth, is defined as Bhagavan. This Krishna who is the cause of all the causes. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. So in these 3 verses that is being established about how there are conditioned jivas and liberated jivas. And beyond the conditioned and liberated jivas, there is the Supreme Personality, who is called as a Paramatma, Uttama Purusha. And then even the cause of that Paramatma, there is one other person who is behind the Paramatma, that is the Supreme Lord Bhagavan, that is Sri Krishna. He is the cause of all the causes. So this is the actual conclusion to be understood by studying the Vedas. So once you come to this conclusion that Krishna is the cause of all the causes, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then what do? We surrender to him, we engage in his service. So these 3 verses actually speaks on the level of the Sambandha. It gives the Sambandha Jnana. Then the verse number 19, it speaks about Yomam evam asangmuda janati purushottamam sa sarvavid bhajatimam sarva bhavena bharata. Then the verse 19 speaks about what is that? If you just think about it. Yomam evam asammudo janati purushottamam sa sarvavid bhajatimam. So what does it refers to? Abhidaya. It refers to the process that we need to engage. We need to engage in bhajan, we need to engage in service, devotional service, starting with the Navavida Bhakti. And then what happens after we engage in devotional service? Iti guhyatamam shastram idam muktam mayanaga. Then how it goes? Etad buddhva buddhiman syat krita krityascha bharata. What happens? One attains perfection in life. So perfection in life means what? one is completely purified of all misgivings, and then he is able to be drishta evatmanishware. Bhagavatam explains that one is purified of all the bindings in this material world, this bondage in this material world. Then he is fixed in his constitutional position as eternal servant of Krishna, engaged in pure and unalloyed service, which he is having his relationship with the Supreme Lord, loving relationship with the Supreme Lord. So this is what is going to be discussed in the 5 verses. Now we will see are you able to follow what we are discussing? So now we will see first verse. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur is pointing out, because I am the knower of the Vedas, I will speak in brief the essential meaning of all the Vedas in 3 verses. Text 16. Dvayumau purushau loke sharash-chakshara evacha sharah sarvani bhutani kutasto shara uchyate. There are 2 classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. Shara and Akshara. In the material world, every living entity is fallible. And in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. So, Shara, Akshara, Evacha, Dvayumau. There are 2 kinds of living entities. Shara, Sarvani, Bhutani. So, in this material world, everyone is Shara. And then Kutastok Shara Uchyate. Whereas, there is other set of living entities who are infallible. Aksharaha. They are called infallible. And what is their nature? They are in oneness with the Supreme Lord. We will try to understand what it is. Okay. So Prabhupada here goes on to make the point that there are 2 kinds of living entities, the fallible and the infallible. The living entities are eternally separated parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When they are in contact with the material world, they are called Jiva Bhuta. And the Sanskrit words given here are Sharas Sarvani Bhutani, mean that they are fallible. Why they are fallible? When the Jiva comes in touch with the material nature, immediately he tries to lord over the material nature, and he is given a different covering. We are with the spiritual senses, we are with the spiritual body in the material world, in the spiritual world. But then we want to lord over, immediately we are covered. Now here Prabhupada goes on to explain. But those who are in oneness with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, are called infallible. So he goes on to explain what is it infallible. Oneness does not mean that they have no individuality, but that there is no disunity. They are all agreeable to the purpose of the creation. So now, very easily we can understand this. Let's say in the house, the father decides to visit Sri Rangam. But the wife says, let us go to some cinema. Then the son says, no, let's go to some Disney World. There is no Disney World in Salem, so difficult for me to. Anyway, let's go to some other fun park. And then the daughter says, everybody is with different opinion, different ideas. So they are not in oneness with the wish of the father. So these are the fallible souls. The infallible souls are those souls who are completely in oneness with the Supreme Father. Or here in this example, the wife, the daughter and the son, everybody simply follows. They also desire to follow the Father. So this is called as the fallible and infallible. So that's what we say. When we say they are one with the Lord, means they are one in desire with the Lord. Oneness in desire with the Lord. That's the understanding. Already we saw this in while discussing Sri Isha Upanishad. Ekatvam anupashyatah. That is the understanding of Ekatvam. Okay. Now Prabhupada goes on to explain about the fallible living entities. He says, the living entities who are struggling in this world with the mind and 5 senses have their material bodies which are changing. Okay, this is the first point. So material bodies are changing, whereas in the spiritual world, we are having a permanent identity. There is no change, it's a permanent. The conditioned living entity, as long as the living entity is conditioned, his body changes due to contact with matter. Matter is changing, so the living entity appears to be changing. But in the spiritual world, the body is not made of matter. Therefore, there is no change. In the material world, the living entity undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, duration, reproduction, then dwindling and vanishing. Shadvikar, we call it. So these are the changes of the material body. But in the spiritual world, the body does not change. There is no old age. There is no birth. There is no death. There all exists in oneness. Yeah, the Lord is Navayavanam. The Lord has a beautiful body. So similarly, the Jiva also, in his constitutional position, is not subjected to change. And then Prabhupada says that the fallible living entities are from the Brahma to the ant, he says. Any living entity who has come in contact with matter, beginning from the first created being, Brahma, down to a small ant, is changing its body. Therefore, they are fallible. Okay. Now, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary is making one point. He is giving another definition. The Lord makes clear the meaning of these 2 words. Which 2 words? Shara and Akshara. All the living entities are one aggregate Jiva, Sarvani Shara. The collective Jiva, fallen from his Swarupa by beginningless ignorance and subject to karma, becomes the variety of living entities up to the moving entities like Lord Brahma. Prabhupada says the same thing, no, in a purport. So from Brahma to ant, so everybody actually, they are all Sarvani Ksharaha, he says. But then those who have tried to lord out the material nature, they have lost their Swarupa because of ignorance, and then they are trying to lord out the material nature. The second conscious being, Akshara, is situated for all the time with his one Swarupa which does not fall. And he gives a definition, Kutastaha, which is situated over all time with one form. So another definition for Kutastaha means, the form, the Swarupa doesn't change. Always is fixed in the Swarupa. Narayan Prabhu, are you following? We are discussing here. Okay. So let's now go to text 17. The Lord now speaks about the Paramatma which the yogis worship. Now the Lord is now clarifying, having spoken about Shara and Akshara, now he is speaking about the Purusha. Uttamah Purushastvanya Paramatmeti Udahritah Yo Lokatrayama Vishya Bivartyavyaya Ishvaraha. Besides these 2, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord himself, who has entered the 3 worlds and is maintaining them. Uttamaha Purushastvanyaha. Seeing is very important word here. 2. But he says, Uttama Purusha. Anyaha. Anyaha means apart from these 2 what we have discussed. Whose 2? Shara and Akshara. There is Anya. There is another personality. Who is that? Paramatmet Udahritah. It is said there is Paramatma also, who is different from Shara and Akshara. We should not think that when Shara becomes Akshara, he is merged. No. Very clearly the distinction is given. There is infallible souls, fallible souls, and the topmost soul, the Uttama Purusha, is also discussed. Yolokatrayam Avishya Bibart Avyaya Ishvaraha. So what he is saying, he is, because we all know, without the entry of Paramatma, nothing moves in this world. So he has entered the 3 worlds and he is sustaining the 3 worlds. Okay. So now Prabhupada immediately gives the reference of how Paramatma is different from the Jivatma. He gives the reference that, what's that? From Shvetashvatra Upanishad. He gives, it is clearly stated here that above the innumerable living entities, some of whom are conditioned, some of whom are liberated, there is the Supreme Personality who is Paramatma. So you see, immediately this quote is given from Shvetashvatra Upanishad. Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. There is one Supreme Conscious Entity who is conscious of all the other living entities. So he is different from all the living entities. So he says, a wise man who can understand him is eligible to attain perfect peace, not others. So that's the whole point. So because the moment you understand that there is the Supreme Personality of the Lord. There is the Uttama Purushastvanyah. So the problem happens by these so many so-called spiritualists. What they are trying to do? They are trying to merge themselves with the Brahman. They are thinking that they are one with the Brahman. So that is where the problem is. So they can never be peaceful. Why? The Bhagavatam explains. Aruhya Krishrena param padam tataha patantyadaha yushmadangrayaha. What happens? They fall down from the position of Brahman. They want to be peaceful, but they cannot be peaceful because the Jiva wants to always be active, engage in some service. So here Prabhupada makes a point that a wise man, if he has understood that he is the Uttama Purusha, he is Anyaha, he is not one among us, he is the topmost personality. We are anchored, we are under his shelter. So such a person becomes peaceful. So as we discussed, same thing Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is also pointing out in his commentary. He says, the word tu indicates a distinction from what was previously spoken. As the yogi is a different worshipper than the jnani, the object worshipped by him will also be different. Clear distinction is there. The Lord shows the nature of Paramatma. Paramatma is he who, though having the nature of commanding, Ishvara, and being unchanging, Avyaya, enters into the three worlds completely and supports and protects it. Here, Srila Baladevi Debhushan Prabhu in his commentary is pointing out one more thing. He says, Uttama here means the most outstanding. Purusha Uttama. Loke here refers to the scriptures written by men, Smriti. And Loka means that which reveals the meaning of the Vedas. He is praised in the Smriti and the Vedas, he says. All the, not in the Shrutis, the Vedas and the Smritis also. Smritis also considered Vedas. We saw so many quotations by Srila Jiva Goswami. The point that is being made here is that he is glorified everywhere as Paramatma in both the Shruti and Smriti. And he is immediately giving a reference from a Shruti and a Smriti, you can see here. The Atma, the object of mercy, rising from its body, attains the supreme light, the supreme person, and manifests his natural form. Then he gives another reference from Skanda Purana. The supreme person, Bhagavan, appeared in Satyavati through Parashara. Okay. Now, after having explained about the Shara and Akshara, and then the Uttama Purusha, now he goes on to explain about Bhagavan feature. So first shloka speaks about the Brahman, then the second speaks about the Paramatma, then the third speaks about the Bhagavan. The 18th verse speaks about the Bhagavan. And all these three verses are speaking about which part of the Jnana? Sambandha Jnana. It is giving the relationship between the living entities and the Supreme Lord. And also clearly pointing out the levels of the absolute truth. That is also, we need to know that. Otherwise somebody may be stuck in Brahman level, somebody may be stuck in the Paramatma level. But only when somebody knows that Bhagavan is the ultimate stage of realization, he will come and take shelter of Bhagavan. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, having spoken about the object of worship of the yogis, Paramatma, the Lord now speaks about the object of worship of the devotees, Bhagavan. Text 18. Yasmat sharamati toham aksharad apichottamah atosmi loke vedecha pratitaf purushottamah. Because I am transcendental beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that supreme person. Now another clarification is given. Yasmat sharam atitoham. In the previous verse it is mentioned uttama purushastvanyaha. Anyaha refers to shara and akshara. I am the uttama purusha. Now he is saying that yasmat sharam atitoham. Beyond the shara and akshara, uttamaha. Uttama purusha was discussed. Now there is another person who is above all this. Atosmi loke vedecha. He is celebrated in the Vedas and the other, all the three worlds also is celebrated. Pratitaf Purushottama. I am celebrated both in this world and in the Vedas as that Supreme Person. So here it is clearly referring to the Bhagavan feature of the Lord. Now let's see the purport. Here, no one can surpass. Oh, okay. Another, I just missed to explain one point. Here you can see. Here Krishna says aham. The word aham is used. Okay. Yasmat sharam atitoham. So Krishna is speaking. I am, he is saying. You see in the previous verse, he says uttamav purushastvanyah paramatma udaharata. If you see the translation, I'll just try to show something. Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them. Now, if you see, there will be several shlokas in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna sometimes will speak in the second person. He could say, I am, for example, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam, Yantra Rudani Maya. In that verse, there are just this verse is coming to my mind. You will see something like sometimes Krishna speaks in the second person. Sometimes he speaks directly, he speaks in the first person. We already discussed this point before. If you remember, I just gave you an analogy. Sometimes the teacher, she comes and then she gives instruction to the student. She comes and then says, every one of you listen to me. She says sometimes like this. Sometimes the teacher says, your teacher is now explaining some things. You have to listen to her or listen to him. Sometimes both expressions are okay. Sometimes she gives some stress, sometimes she gives, so that's the point. So sometimes the Gita we can see, and elsewhere also in scriptures, sometimes it will be like someone, the Lord Himself will be speaking, but then He is establishing a principle. When He is establishing some principles, He may speak in the second person. Are you getting the point? So now you can see here Krishna Himself is speaking, Krishna is only speaking. Krishna is now in this verse, He is speaking, aham, I am, he says. So He is greater than the Paramatma, He is greater than all the Shara and Akshara. And when Krishna says I, we heard from the Gita, in the 11th chapter, Krishna who is speaking with Arjuna, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is no truth superior to me, Krishna also established in the 7th chapter. So, it is very clearly referring to the Bhagavan, the ultimate, the Swayam Rupa form, who is he speaking here. Okay. So, here Prabhupada in the beginning of the purport is pointing out, no one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Neither the conditioned soul nor the liberated soul. He is therefore the greatest of personalities. Now it is clear here that the living entities and Supreme Personality of Godhead are individuals. The difference is that the living entities, either in the conditioned state or in the liberated state, cannot surpass in quantity the inconceivable potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is a very important point. Sometimes some people get stuck, in quantity, there is a huge difference between there is vast difference. We cannot even imagine how much is the difference. And then also, like yesterday we discussed, even in quality, yes, certainly there is similarity, but in quality also, nobody can match the quality of that Lord. But there are similarities. If there are no similarities, then there is no question of comparison, there is no question of compatibility, there is no question of relationship. There is similarity. Now Prabhupada goes on to explain, it is incorrect to think of the Supreme Lord of the living entities as being on the same level or equal in all respects. There is always the question of superiority and inferiority between their personalities. The word Uttama is very significant. No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Loke signifies in the Paurusha Agama, the Smriti scriptures, as confirmed in the Niruti dictionary, Lokayate Vedartho Anena. The purpose of the Vedas is explained by the Smriti scriptures. So the point is that He is glorified everywhere. So here Prabhupada concludes the purport by giving references to the Paramatma feature that is being glorified in the Vedas, and also the Supreme Personality of God is also mentioned in the Vedas. So he says that the super soul coming out of the body enters the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. Then in his form he remains in his spiritual identity. That Supreme is called the Supreme Personality. So now we understand, even the super soul, what he enters the Brahman, and then the Brahman, what is that Brahman? Brahman is the effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is being mentioned here. So Prabhupada concludes, this means that the Supreme Personality is exhibiting and diffusing his spiritual effulgence, which is the ultimate illumination. That Supreme Personality has a localized aspect as Paramatma, by incarnating himself as the son of Satyavati and Parashara. he explains the Vedic knowledge as Vyasadeva. So the Lord performs various activities. He is one of his incarnations is mentioned that the Lord gives the knowledge. He himself expands as Vyasadeva's literary incarnation and gives this transcendental knowledge. So in these 3 verses that we see that the Lord is clearly establishing the position of Shara and Akshara, and then he is establishing the position of Paramatma, and then he is establishing the position of Bhagavan. So this is what is actual subject matter is discussed in the Vedanta Sutra. That's why he said that we need to have quite a good seminar on this 3 shloki, wherein all the discussions about the different Shaktis of the Lord, the 3 Purusha avatars, then the 3 energies, Antaranga Shakti, Bahiranga Shakti, Tatashta Shakti, and then even the various various causations of the creations can be discussed. Then how finally the Bhagavatam is giving the ultimate Samam Bonam is given in the Bhagavatam, Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam. Then there can also be discussion about the various tattvas, Shakti Tattva, Shiva Tattva, then Jiva Tattva, then Vishnu Tattva, and then all the tattvas should be discussed in detail. Then as we discuss about the various energies that needs to be discussed also, and also the conclusion of the Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. With all these conclusions, you come to understand what there are Baddha Jivas, Nitya Baddhas, Nitya Siddhas. This is again a very big discussion. Who are the Nitya Siddhas? Who are the Nitya Baddhas? And then ultimately all this discussion will come to a conclusion as discussed in these 3 verses. So there are conditioned souls, there are perfected souls. Conditioned souls are struggling in the material world due to lording over the material nature, due to trying to lord over the material nature. They are struggling with their senses, as Krishna is explaining. Then there are perfected souls. The perfected souls also, the Nitya Suris, what they are doing, they are one with the Lord with the desire of the Lord. Not that they are merged with the Lord. That is another clear understanding we get. Then there is also the Paramatma feature of the Lord, Brahman realization, then the Paramatma realization, then the Bhagavan realization. Then ultimately, what the Jiva has to do? The Jiva, after having come to get this understanding, perfect understanding of this, then the Jiva has to engage in the service of the Lord. Once you know Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then what do? We ultimately engage in His service. So that is what is being explained in the next verse. So all these 3 verses that we saw so far, is discussing about the Sambandha. Now we will go to the next verse, which discusses about the Abhidheya. Now Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary, he goes on to explain about how Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and how Bhakti is the superior process in his commentary onto this verse. So we will see few quotations. So he explains that over the process of karma and jnana, Bhakti is the topmost process. He gives a reference. Naishkarmyam apyachyuta bhava varjitam nashobhate. Knowledge of self-realization, even though free from all material affinity, does not look well if devoid of conception of the infallible God. Okay, again from the 11th canto of Bhagavatam is giving a reference. There tasman mad bhakti yuktasya yogino vai mad atmanaha na jnanam na cha vairagyam praya shreyo bhaved iha. Therefore, for a devotee engaged in my loving service with mind fixed on me, the cultivation of knowledge and renunciation is generally not the means of achieving the highest perfection within this world. Then again, it's a very important verse. He goes on to explain. Everything that can be achieved by fruitive activities, penance, knowledge, detachment, mystic yoga, charity, religious duties, and all other means of perfecting life is easily achieved by my devotee through loving service unto me. Sarvam madbhakti yogena madbhakto labate. Madbhakto labate jasa. Swargapagham madhama katanchid yadivanchati. If somehow or other my devotee desires promotion to heaven, liberation or residence in my abode, he easily achieves such benedictions. So then there is another important quote from Narayaniya. He is saying, Yavai sadhana sampatti purushartha chatushtaye taya vina tat apnoti naro narayana ashrayah. Even without the usual requirements for achieving the perfection of a life, a person will gain that perfection if he is simply a surrendered devotee of Narayana. So ultimately, with the conclusion of these three verses, one comes to the conclusion that Krishna is the object of worship. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And simply by engaging in pure devotional service, one can attain the perfection. And another feature, we also, if you remember, if you read the Bhagavatam, why Krishna is considered to be the most merciful personality in this entire creation or in all this universe. Why? There is one reference he is giving. One special quality of Krishna makes him the most compassionate and the most the object of worship. Anybody remembers? It's a very famous one. Anybody remembers? Uddhava is speaking this to Vidura. He's saying. So you remember the verse where Uddhava is glorifying Krishna, saying that aho bakiyam stanakala kute. He says that what is it that is so wonderful with my Lord is that he actually, even though Putana, she came with the poison smeared on her breast, my Lord, he still accepted her as his mother and he sucked out her life hair. But then by that what he gave her the position of mother in the spiritual world. So who can do this? So that is why Krishna. So same point he is here. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur is pointing out. He is saying that, however, among the forms of Bhagavan, Krishna is considered to be the supreme attractive form, just as the sun is considered superior to the huge fire. Why? Because Krishna alone can give nirvana moksha, the final fruit of worship of Brahman, even to his enemies such as Aga, Bhaka and Jarasandha, who were most sinful. Okay, that's the whole point. Okay, now let's go to the next verse. Text 19. Now so far we discussed the Sambandha aspect. Now we will discuss the Abhidaya. The results for those who know the Lord as a supreme person are described in order to highlight the nature of the Lord. Yo mam evam asangmudho janati purushottamam sasarvavid bhajati mam sarva bhavena bharata. This is an important verse to memorize. Whoever knows me as a supreme personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. So, yomam evam asangmudo. So, now we have to take shelter of Krishna without any doubt, without any hesitation, completely taking full shelter of him. Janati, one should know. Purushottama, that is what is discussed in the previous three verses. He is that Uttama Purusha. So when somebody knows that, sa sarva vid bhajati mam sarva bhavena bharata. So sa sarva vid, so with all his energy, one should engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Bhajati mam, Krishna says, one should engage in my service. Then he becomes one, sarva bhavena, he becomes a knower of everything, he knows everything. You know all the vidyas, everything that is to be known, everything is known to the person who is the unalloyed devotee of Krishna. So that is being discussed here. So we can see here, this word asang mudaha, without any doubt, very clearly one should know that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. Even elsewhere also Krishna many times he repeats, he says tattvataha, in truth. In the fourth chapter Krishna says janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tattvataha. One who knows me in truth what he knows about this janma, his birth, his activities. Then what is the result of that? Punarjanma na vidyate. He goes back to the abode of the Lord. So similarly Krishna says here that janati purushottamam, he becomes what happens? He, without doubting, when he knows Krishna as a supreme personality of Godhead, whoever knows that, then he engages in his devotional service and becomes a knower of everything. He knows about everything. That is the whole point here. Let's see what Srila Prabhupada got to say here. So now there are so many philosophical conclusions. So many people speak so many things. But when one comes to, by hearing in parampara, when one comes to get this understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, He is the ultimate shelter, then he becomes the knower of everything. Prabhupada begins the purport like this, and then he says, who are those imperfect knowers? He says that the imperfect knowers are one who are trying to understand the message of Bhagavad Gita by speculation, by their own ideas. They will never be able to understand about Krishna's supreme position. Prabhupada makes here a point. The imperfect knower goes on simply speculating about the absolute truth, but the perfect knower, without wasting his valuable time, engages directly in Krishna consciousness, the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Throughout the whole of the Bhagavad Gita, this fact is being stressed at every step. How many times we have seen Prabhupada's comments, and also in Krishna also is stressing, only to my devotee this knowledge will be revealed. So that is an important point, because he says that, and still the whole of Bhagavad Gita, and still there are so many stubborn commentators on the Bhagavad Gita who consider the supreme absolute truth and the living entities to be one and the same. This is the problem. They put everybody on the same box. Now here Srila Prabhupada is pointing out, very strong statement here the Prabhupada is giving. You can just look here. One should actually receive the Vedic message from authorities like Krishna and his representatives. Here Krishna distinguishes everything very nicely, and one should hear from this source. Simply to hear like the hogs is not sufficient. One must be able to understand from the authorities. It is not that one should simply speculate academically. Why Prabhupada is saying here, one should not hear like the hogs? Why? If you just a little bit think about this, what the hogs are interested in? They are interested in stool. They are not interested in to make some fresh halwa. They don't have absolutely no interest, but something else they are interested in. Similarly, there are so many people they do not want Krishna. They don't want Krishna. They want to avoid Krishna because they are envious of Krishna. Every one of us very envious of Krishna. That's why we are here. But there are souls who correct themselves. They want to glorify Krishna, as it is explained in the previous. Atosmi loke vedecha. He has to be glorified. He has to be celebrated. Krishna should be celebrated throughout 24 hours a day, 365 days. He should be celebrated. Now, those who are like hogs, they are not interested in that. They are not interested. So they are interested in materialistic pleasure. So which is compared to the stool. It is not going to give pleasure from beginning to end. The materialistic pleasure is only going to give suffering. So such kind of personalities cannot understand, Krishna says. So there are so many professors who some professors in some big universities. They never can really touch the subject matter of the Bhagavad Gita. In the beginning, in the introduction, Prabhupada gives the example of if someone is trying to lick the bottle of honey. If they let's lick it from outside, what kind of taste they can get about the honey? No way. Similarly, these people, they don't understand Krishna's unique position. He is revealed. The Lord reveals himself only to the devotees who are surrendering themselves and engaging their senses in the service of Master of the senses, Rishikesha. To such personalities, the Lord reveals himself. So then he experiences the real happiness and bliss. So Srila Prabhupada, he continues, one should submissively hear from Bhagavad Gita that these living entities are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is able to understand this, according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, knows the purpose of the Vedas. No one else knows the purpose of the Vedas. Now Prabhupada clarifies that this word bhajati is again in relation with the Supreme Lord. In many places the word bhajati is expressed in relationship with the service of the Supreme Lord. If a person is engaged in full Krishna consciousness in the devotional service of the Lord, it is to be understood that he has understood all the Vedic knowledge. In the Vaishnava Parampara, it is said that if one is engaged in the devotional service of Krishna, then there is no need for any other spiritual process for understanding the absolute truth. He has already come to the point because he is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. He has ended all preliminary processes of understanding. So that's the whole point. Bhaktya mama janati yavan yaschasmi tatpataha. And also, we can see, there is one very nice verse. Let me just... there is a beautiful verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he is pointing out, he is saying that, the Lord is protecting his devotees by giving the perfect philosophy of Krishna consciousness. So he says that in the ocean, if you see in the ocean, there are so many dangerous animals. There are timingalas, there are some crocodiles, and there are other ferocious animals. And all they are compared to the dangerous philosophies. The Buddhists, the Mimamsakas, the Karmavadis, then the Mayavadis. Everyone, what they are all trying to impose wrong philosophies. But the wrong philosophies, as Srila Prabhupada here in the beginning of the Parpati points out, that they don't distinguish between the jivas and the Brahman. Everything is one, or there is nothing. They speak out nothing, or they say that everything happens according to the karma. These are the Karmavadis. Or there are again another set of philosophers. They say that everything is happening because of the material nature. Material nature is the cause. So like that, so many fallacious philosophies they are coming up with, all misdirected philosophies. Now, but for a person who has taken shelter of the Supreme Lord and his pure devotees, specifically in that verse, Sri Krishna Kaviraj Goswami is pointing out, he is offering his obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Tomorrow is Sri Gaura Purnima. So by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we are protected in understanding the proper philosophies. Ek Krishna Das, Te Vishwas, Korle Toyar Dukanai. So we take shelter of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage in his Sasarvavid Bhajati Mam. We engage in his devotional service. So that is the point here. So Prabhupada, he concludes the purport, he's saying that life, but if anyone, after speculating for hundreds of thousands of lives, does not come to the point that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that one has to surrender there all his speculation for so many years, and lives and live is a useless waste of time. His life is just a useless waste of time. Simply not engaging in Krishna's service every moment is a waste of time. And he can never have a peaceful life. In Chaitanya Bhagavad, there is a nice description. It is mentioned that, how does the verse go? Anayadeta maranam charanasya katam bhaved. Vinayashena maranam charanasya katam bhaved. He says that for a person who has not engaged in the service of the Lord, charanasya katam bhaved. For him, one who has not taken shelter of Govinda, anayashena maranam, vinad dainyena jivanam, anaradita Govinda, charanasya katam bhaved. So he says that anaradita Govinda, for one who has not worshipped Govinda, who has not taken shelter of Govinda's lotus feet, how a person can have a peaceful life and how he can have a peaceful death. Both are not possible, he says. So it is possible only when a person takes up to the service of the lotus feet of the Lord. So that is the essential point here mentioned. So that's why this verse is compared to the Abhidaya process is given here. Now Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary points out, though this has been established by you, philosophers will argue over the meaning. Are you getting the point? What he's trying to say? In the last 3 verses, we discussed how there is Shara, there is Akshara, there is Uttama Purusha, Paramatma, and then there is Bhagavan. All these things is discussed. Krishna personally is given the clear conclusions of the Vedanta Sutras. All the conclusions of the Vedas, Krishna is now clearly delineated. Even in the previous verse, he has also said that I am the essence of the Vedas. Vedanta Krit Vedavit Evachaham. Everything Krishna has spoken. Now, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur is raising a question. My dear Lord, there are always some philosophers who will come up with another meaning. Now, it's not that, it is this. This is what they are doing all the time. So now he's saying that, now you see, now Krishna is responding like this. He says, let them argue. They are all bewildered by my Maya, and the devotee is not bewildered. So he says that he who is not bewildered by the arguments of these philosophers, Asammudaha, knows everything. Are you getting the point? How nicely he's presenting. Even though he has not studied the scriptures, he is the knower of the meaning of all the scriptures. He may not know all the scriptures, as some of these Vedantis, they may quote from so many different Upanishads, this and that. But a devotee may not know. So he says that, but he knows the conclusion of the entire scriptures. He knows that Krishna is the object of worship. The other person, though he has indeed studied and taught all the scriptures, is really a complete fool. Asam Mudaha. He who knows me worships me with complete love. The other person, though he worships something, does not worship me. So this is a nice point he makes. So Srila Baladevi Debhushan Prabhu is pointing out that, but a person who doubts my opinion, he says, but he who doubts my position as a supreme person, even though he has studied all the Vedas, is actually ignorant. Though he may do all types of worship, he is not a devotee. It's a nice point, no? So one may be very well versed in performing so many this yagya, that yagya, so many things, but if you ask him, what is the goal of the Vedas? So what do they say? There are so many goals. Which goal you want? They ask questions like this. Sometimes you can question Trivedis, Dvivedis, Chaturvedis. So much they know. There are as many opinions also, they say. But for a devotee, he is very clear. What is the conclusion of the Vedas? Vedanta krit vedavit eva chaham. Vedaisha sarver aham eva vedyaha. So here, there is a nice purport by Srila Prabhupada. I just put a reference here. We'll read that. Prabhupada is pointing out in one of the commentaries in the Bhagavatam. He says, the hog is interested in eating stool. If the hog is offered some nice preparation made of condensed milk or ghee, he won't like it. He would prefer obnoxious, bad-smelling stool, which he finds very relishable. Materialistic persons are considered condemned because they are interested in hellish activities and not in transcendental activities. The message of the Lord's activities is nectar, and besides that message, any information in which we may be interested is actually hellish. This is the point. And also, sometimes we hear there is another, there's a kind of a proverb in Tamil. They say that, you bathe the dog. Very nicely, you bathe the dog, do everything. Sometimes what the dog does, this dog just goes to the filthy things. Sometimes they're saying in Tamil like that. So similarly, those who are not trained in this process of Krishna consciousness, those who have not developed the taste for the real nectar, obviously they will look for stinking things. So, but a devotee who has experienced this bliss of Krishna consciousness never would like to taste anything which is not detrimental to the Krishna consciousness. Okay, now this last verse is speaking about the abhidaya or the prayojana process. Now, what is the result one gets by understanding Krishna's superior position and by engaging in his service? What is the result he's getting? The knowledge is not revealed to the unqualified persons. With that in mind, the Lord speaks. Iti guhyatamam shastram idam uktang maya nagha etad buddhva buddhiman syat kritakrityascha bharata. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. You see here, Krishna says, "Iti guhyatamam shastram." Again, he says that this is the most confidential part of the knowledge. What is the most confidential part? What we heard, that the 3 shlokas, and then the process of engaging in devotional service. It's a very confidential one. Idam uktang maya, by me, I have revealed it. Anaga, he calls Arjuna as Anaga, O sinless one. Etad buddhva buddhiman syat. By understanding this, one becomes intelligent. Krita krityascha bharata. One becomes intelligent or one becomes perfect. He becomes perfect in all his endeavors also. Krita krityascha means doing karta or activities. All his activities he becomes perfect. So by the process of devotional service, one becomes perfect. Perfect means what? As we discussed before, one attains the perfection in life. The perfection in life is to develop pure love for Krishna. So one comes to that realization by engaging in devotional service to the Lord and understanding his unique position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And raso vaisaha rasam evayam labdhvanando hi bhavati. Simply by knowing that Krishna is the source of all the pleasure and engaging in his service, one attains the perfection of life. So now Prabhupada begins the purport with the point. In other words, by understanding the philosophy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engaging in his transcendental service, everyone can become freed from all contaminations of the modes of material nature. Now, what is the result of practicing devotional service? Prabhupada is pointing out here that one becomes free from the effect of the darkness. Wherever there is sun, there is no question of darkness. When the sun is present, there is no question of darkness. Therefore, whenever devotional service is present, under the proper guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, there is no question of ignorance. The Prachetas, in one of their prayers to the Supreme Lord, they point out that at least He says that at the moment when we are engaged in Krishna Katha, whenever we are engaged in the service of the Lord, we are completely deluded from Maya. So they are expressing their realization. So this is a very fact. So we can be completely free from Maya simply by absorbing ourselves in the service of Krishna. Now Prabhupada is urging the readers, all the followers of the Bhagavad Gita, he is saying that everyone must take to this consciousness of Krishna and engage in devotional service to become intelligent and purified. Unless one comes to this position of understanding Krishna and engages in devotional service, however intelligent he may be in the estimation of some common man, he is not perfectly intelligent. That's why in this shloka also it is said, no, harav abhaktasya kuto mahad guna manorate nasati davato bahi. One may be very smart, very polite, very gentle, you may have so many different skills, but it's all appearing to be good, but it's a very dangerous position. Because why it is a dangerous position? The quality a person is exhibiting right now is maybe very gentle in speech, is very very mannered, but if he's not a devotee of the Lord, that means what? He's maybe maximum somebody can be in the platform of Sattva Guna. But even the platform of Sattva Guna, is it a safe position? Why it is not a safe position? What is our understanding by hearing in the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita? Yeah, so that's why I'm saying that maybe it's a safe position. Sorry? Sattva Guna is also, we are bound. But then again, I'm expecting another point. The point that I'm expecting, even in the Sattva, there is seeds of Rajoguna and Tamoguna. It is there. And also we discussed so many examples, remember? There are great personalities who are all in Sattva Guna also, but they all fell down. Anytime the influence of the modes, also we heard, no, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, it's always with different proportions, it is just attacking a person. So that's why the only safest position is to be in Shuddha Sattva. Sattva is a platform from which one can rise. So here, Prabhupada very much discusses this point of Anaga. Very important discussion. Because unless one is pure, he cannot make progress in Krishna consciousness. Further progress is not possible. That is why we have the process, along with the process of chanting the holy names of Krishna, we also have, there are do's and don'ts. If you simply do only do's, and if you don't avoid the don'ts, we are in trouble. One hand I will chant Hare Krishna, on the other hand I will engage in sinful activities. It doesn't work. That's why we have 4 regulative principles of freedom. No meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication. We will get the strength to follow this by the process of Krishna consciousness. Why it is so? Why it is very much required for us to be pure? Unless we are pure, we cannot properly engage in the service of the Supreme Pure. That is why at the end of the 7th chapter, Krishna is pointing out who can be with full determination engage in Krishna's service. Isn't it? So that's why we have weakness. See, Prabhupada also in the purport we will discuss about weakness of heart. Sometimes we are enthusiastic, sometimes we are not enthusiastic. Sometimes we feel like let us leave devotional service. Sometimes we feel like let us really cut our eating, cut our sleeping. We go to another extreme, like pendulum. Sometimes so much into renunciation, sometimes so much into sense gratification. Prabhupada gives this example when he's discussing in the matchless gift. He gives this very nice example of it should not be like the pendulum. He says, it moves up and down. So the point that is, what is the main point of discussion here? The point of anaga. We should be sinless. So Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita. He says that Esham tu antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva moha nirmukta bhajante mam dridhavrataha. So when one is purified from all sinful activities, all the sinful reactions, then he becomes extremely determined. So that means what? He crosses the stage of anartha nivriti. Then he goes further up with all the other stages. So till we come to the stage of anartha nivriti, we may be always, there is the stage of anashita bhajana kriya. Nishta, and then we cross the stage of nishta. So anyway, so the whole point of discussion is here Prabhupada is pointing out that we should become sinless. So at least if we are in the stage of not voluntarily engaging in sinful activities or not voluntarily engaging in activities which are detrimental to Krishna consciousness. We should control, we should have good association, we should not play around with the smartphone, we should not play around with the internet, we should not play around with anything which is not favorable to Krishna consciousness. Very difficult, mind is flickering, it just, there's it's called tantalizing, there is an attraction. Immediately we want to Go for it. We go for it and then we are lost. So then we become, immediately we remember, then we engage in sin. And once we engage in sin, then the proclivity to engage in sin, it again increases to perform sinful activities. It's a vicious cycle. We just get caught in that. So, asanga shastrena dridena chitva. We need to cut this attachment. Say no. No means no. That's all. So for that we need the help of devotees. We need to really take shelter of the holy name. We should engage in service. That will give us the determination. On our own we are very weak. So that's why we have Hari Guru Vaishnavas. We have Krishna Prasadam, Krishna's name, Krishna Katha. There is no powerful process than this in this Kali Yuga. So Prabhupada goes on to say, devotional service is so pure and potent that once one is engaged in devotional service, he automatically comes to a stage of sinlessness. So what did Narada Muni do to Mrighari? Nothing he did. He asked him to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Full faith, he chanted the holy names. And he became so pure that when he was walking, Narada Muni and Angri Rishi were completely surprised. He was so careful in keeping the steps so that he doesn't want to even harm any ants or any other small entities which are on the earth. This is the transformation a person gets by taking shelter of the holy names. Now Prabhupada gives why we are weak, why that tendency to be away from Krishna consciousness or tendency to be weak. He gives the background here. He says, the most important thing one has to surmount is the weakness of the heart. So he says that we have to take precaution while we are associating with devotees. We have to take precaution. What is the precaution? First thing, we have to identify the weakness of the heart. Hridaya Daurbalyam. The first fall down is caused by the desire to lord it over the material nature. Thus, one gives up the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. So that's what happens. So when we are just, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur also is explaining, with the Jiva, there is two sides of the ocean. When he looks at the other side of the Karana, there is always a tendency to enjoy. So when he leaves the association of the Bhagavan and he tries to enjoy. So trying to enjoy propensity, what Prabhupada calls it here, he tries to lord over the material nature. The moment he is trying to lord over the material nature, he is captured. Then what happens? He says, then he gives up the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The second weakness of the heart is that as one increases the propensity to lord it over the material nature, he becomes attached to matter and the possession of matter. Then what happens? Then ahang mameti. He gets caught into both these things. I, me, mine. He gets caught into this. Then the problems of material existence are due to these weaknesses of heart. So we have to overcome this weakness of heart. Now Prabhupada concludes here, explain the point. In this chapter, the first 5 verses describe the process of freeing oneself from these weaknesses of heart. And the rest of the chapter from the 6th verse through the end discusses Purushottama Yoga. Thus in the Bhakti-vedanta purpose of the 15th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of Purushottama Yoga, the yoga of the Supreme Person. So now you recollect the links also from the previous chapters. Why Krishna is speaking in these first 6 verses? Because this weakness of heart, it makes us to again engage in sinful activities. So Krishna already explained, Chaturshloki Gita, everything is over. He told about the topmost thing. Now, just to create, what is that shloka, wherein Krishna says that very quickly I am here to, what's the 7th verse? The 15th of the 12th chapter. Tesham aham samudharta mrityu samsara sagarat bhavami nachirat partha. The Lord is ready to rescue us very quickly. At the same time, the Lord is also very merciful. Okay, I'll give you some more instructions which will help you to be careful. You can be more serious. You can catch hold of my lotus feet. Don't get diverted here and there. There are so many things in the name of karma, in the name of jnana. Anya abhilashas can devour you. So he's exactly directing us not to get diverted by giving the showing about the banyan tree in this particular chapter, how it is offering so many different things, and we may get carried away. So Krishna is saying that no, you have to, with the powerful process of devotional service, hanging on to the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, Dridena Chitva, Asanga Shastrena, you have to cut this attachment to this material world. And then Krishna goes on to explain again he re-establishes from the Vedas and the Vedanta Sutras that how he is the ultimate object of worship. He has to be worshipped, one has to engage in his devotional service, and as a result of that, one can become the perfect gentleman. Who is the perfect gentleman? A pure devotee is the perfect gentleman. Krita Krityascha Bharata. All his endeavors will be perfect. That is the conclusion of this verse. So with that we will conclude this chapter. If you have any questions or comments or any realizations? Okay, if there are no questions and comments, we will end up for the day. And on Sunday, we will have tests from both the chapters. We will meet as usual at 3:30 p.m. Saturday, there was no class. There is no class on Saturday. We will have class again from Monday. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai. Yes. Yes, if you can recollect what is this. There is a Mamai Vamsa Jiva Loke Jiva Buddha Sanatana. Definite verse to be memorized. Then Nirmana Moha Jita Sangha Dosha. That verse to be memorized. Then Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sani Vishtu. Yes, I think I forgot to say that. I think I said yesterday. And then this Yomam Evam Asammuda. That's all. So for those who are really, for the preachers, I would definitely say this 3 shloki is good to know these 3 shlokis. It's very good to know this. Then, that's it. 14, yes, already we discussed. 14 is, you can send me WhatsApp. Yeah, that's all. Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Bhagavad Gita as it is. Hare Krishna. Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai. Gaur Premanand.